Well done.
Thank you very much, Senator Whitehouse. Really appreciate your joining us. We have time for additional questions. I don't know whether there are other Republican members who want to participate remotely. Apparently not. I'll begin another round of questions. Let me begin where Senator Whitehouse finished. Mr. Suplina, you have been dealing with ghost guns and focusing on them for a long time. And I've been struggling with this idea that somehow putting serial numbers on them would lead to a national registry of guns for law-abiding citizens. Is there anything different about putting serial numbers on these guns that are homemade and sold by manufacturers or sold in gun shows that's any different from the system we have now for lawfully sold firearms?
No, Senator. And the regulations that have been proposed are just treating these ghost guns the same way we treat all other firearms.
So this concocted fear of a national registry seems like some kind of smokescreen, is it not?
That's correct. And serialization's been required on commercially sold firearms since at least 1968, and this would just apply that same rule to homemade firearms.
And as Attorney General Shapiro and Commissioner Harrison have testified very cogently, law enforcement needs those serial numbers when guns are discovered at the crime scene in order to figure out who used them. And even if they are stolen or lost, the gun still can be traced to the previous owner, and that previous owner can be questioned, correct?
That's correct. It's a very important piece of evidence in solving any gun crime.
Attorney General Shapiro, I think just very recently you apprehended suspects, I'll call them suspects, alleged criminals who were using ghost guns. Could you describe that incident?
Senator, Mr. Chairman, there have been so many incidents of this. I'm not exactly sure which one you're referring to. We had one about a week and a half or so ago where we had very serious meth dealers in the Lehigh Valley who had $1 million worth of meth, which, for the record, is a lot of meth. They also had ghost guns on them and Nazi paraphernalia. These were serious criminals in our communities. And in order to foster their illegal drug trade, they were relying on ghost guns because it was the only guns they could get their hands on because of their criminal background.
These ghost guns are not only these kinds of handguns, but often they are AK-47s.
That's correct.
Correct?
That's correct, sir.
In fact, I recently saw an ad online for one of them. The seller of an AK-47 build kit announced that it was, quote, one of the simplest processes to date, end quote. The seller helpfully provides a video to help assemble it. Another seller boasts that with their AR-15 kit, quote, building time doesn't take too long. Within an hour or so, you should be breaking it in at the range, end quote. Have you seen these kinds of ads and sales?
We've seen these ads, we've seen these sales, and we've seen these guns on the street. I would just point out something that I think should hopefully be an obvious fact, but criminals oftentimes are weary of buying these online. I think, Mr. Chairman, you referred to an online advertisement that you saw. Why are they weary of doing that? Because it requires some sort of payment that you could then, in law enforcement, potentially trace back. More often than not, we're seeing the criminals at the gun shows, whether they're buying the AK style or they're buying this style, purchase these ghost guns with cash and then use them for criminal activity oftentimes the same day.
And the cash can't be traced either.
That's correct.
Commissioner Harrison, how do the men and women in your police force feel about these ghost guns?
Well, just like I feel about it, just like the chiefs across America, the men and women in rank and file of my department and many departments are concerned that because this is becoming the weapon of choice, it's going to make our job that much more difficult to hold people accountable. Just recently, the latter part of last year, our warrant apprehension task force executed a search and seizure warrant for a subject who had committed a non-fatal shooting. In there, we found a bunch of firearms, but 8 of them were ghost guns, or these privately made firearms. And we were unable to determine how he acquired them, where he acquired them from, who would have sold them or given them to him. Now, while we can do ballistics checks to tie them to other shootings, perhaps it is unknown to us how we hold people accountable who would have bought these guns, or even if he bought them for the purpose of selling them and putting them into the hands of other people. And what we're seeing is a large number of people under the age of 21 who are not allowed to purchase or carry a firearm now in possession of these ghost guns. So the men and women of my department, and as a leader in a number of policing agencies, talking to chiefs every week and every day, we're all very concerned that more and more people who should not have them are getting them, and more young people who otherwise would not be able to get them are getting them, and they're untraceable, and crimes are going either uninvestigated or unsolved.
Thank you. Mr. Splina, you mentioned in response to one of Senator Whitehouse's questions that the motive of the manufacturers of these ghost guns is hardly to promote the Second Amendment rights of people buying them. They're making these ghost guns because they're making money, correct?
This has become a very big business, yes, Senator.
It's a big business. It's growing and becoming more and more profitable, correct?
That's correct. We've identified, in fact, just last year, we identified 80 online sellers of ghost guns. That number's up to 100 this year. And the marketplace has not only grown in number, but it's grown in boldness too, right? You've seen now not just the receivers and frames, but full kits. You've seen the quotes that you mentioned. It's ridiculously easy to build. Anybody can do it. And we've seen those manufacturers appealing to the fact that these are, in fact, untraceable ghost guns.
So in their ads, in their sales pitches, they explicitly pitch that they're untraceable because they have no serial numbers.
That's correct, Senator.
That's one of their major selling points.
Right.
Yes, sir.
And why it's becoming a bigger and bigger business. Did you say more than 100 manufacturers are now?
More than 100 sellers online, yes.
Let me just close by saying, well, let me ask the ranking member whether he has any more questions. I would just close by, first of all, thanking all of you for being here today. What we're seeing in the surge and even explosion in the number of sales of these homemade weapons is absolutely stunning. I think it creates truly a threat not only to legitimate law enforcement, but really to any kind of gun safety protection, because it creates the ability to create a kind of fully visible black market.
Mm-hmm.
Guns sold to criminals in plain sight.
Mm-hmm.
No checks, no background verification, nothing. And that's the reason that President Biden has acted to stop them, and why law enforcement is so strongly in favor of this new regulation. Your testimony has been very powerful. I thank all of the witnesses for being here today. And unless the witnesses have anything to add, I'll close the hearing.